The Scythians. How nomads lost their steppe. What if the most powerful civilization on Earth had no cities, no walls, no fixed address, and still dominated 8 million square kilometers of territory for over 500 years? That was the Scythians. The Scythians were a loosely connected collection of nomadic, horse-centered peoples who dominated the Eurasian steppe, the grassland belt stretching from Hungary to Mongolia, roughly from 900 BCE to 200 BCE. Nomadic means they moved seasonally rather than building permanent settlements. Pastoralist means their economy centered on herding livestock, horses, cattle, sheep, across open steppe rather than farming fixed fields. Here's the first thing most people get wrong. Nomads weren't rootless wanderers. Scythian groups maintained established summer and winter camps they returned to each year. Seasonal addresses, not permanent cities, but real places nonetheless. Everything in Scythian life pivoted on the horse. They were among the earliest peoples to perfect horseback riding as both a military and economic tool, a mobility advantage no infantry-based civilization could easily counter. But here's the question that should stop you. How does a society with no fortified cities survive against armies that can besiege, starve, and outlast an enemy? The Scythians' answer was radical. They refused to stand still. When Darius I of Persia invaded Scythian territory around 513 BCE, the Scythians didn't fight a pitched battle. They retreated endlessly, burned their own pastures, and exhausted the Persian army across hundreds of kilometers of empty steppe. Herodotus documented the Scythians as warriors who reportedly drank from the skulls of defeated enemies. Whether literally true or not, the reputation held, and across the ancient world, reputation was its own weapon. Here's the counterintuitive twist. The Scythians weren't just warriors. They were indispensable economic intermediaries, linking Greek colonies on the Black Sea to Persian markets and Central Asian goods, controlling the arteries of ancient Eurasian trade. Greek cities like Olbia, founded on the Black Sea's northern coast around 647 BCE, depended on Scythian-controlled grain, furs, amber, and slaves, moving westward. The Scythians didn't just raid these networks, they managed them. Scythian cultural reach extended far beyond the battlefield. Their distinctive animal-style art, interlocking predators rendered in gold, appeared from the Danube to the Altai Mountains, a visual vocabulary shared across thousands of kilometers. The richest evidence for Scythian life comes from below the ground. The Scythians buried their elite dead in enormous earthen mounds called kurgans, some rising over 20 meters high, scattered across the Pontic steppe like punctuation marks. Inside these kurgans, archaeologists have found gold jewelry, weapons, horse harnesses, and sacrificed animals, a material record revealing a sharply stratified society with a warrior aristocracy sitting atop a hierarchy of herders and craftspeople. But here's where the story gets harder. The features that made the Scythians powerful, their dispersal, their mobility, their lack of fixed centers, also made them structurally vulnerable to a pressure they'd never faced before. By the 3rd century BCE, the Scythians faced pressure from multiple directions. Macedonian expansion under Philip II pushed into Thrace. The Sarmatian peoples, eastern steppe rivals, pushed from the east. The steppe was shrinking. In 339 BCE, Philip II of Macedon defeated the Scythian king Aetius near the Danube Delta, killing the 90-year-old king and capturing 20,000 Scythian women and children. It was the first major territorial blow to Scythian dominance. That 8 million square kilometers of open steppe that made the Scythians untouchable. By 300 BCE, the same openness had become a liability. No walls meant no choke points. No cities meant no defensible cores to rally around. The Sarmatians, Iranian-speaking nomads from east of the Don River, moved steadily westward through the 3rd and 2nd centuries BCE, displacing Scythian groups from their traditional pasture routes and winter camp territories. Here's a question historians still debate. Did the Scythians collapse, or did they transform? The archaeological record shows something more specific than simple conquest: gradual absorption, cultural blending, and identity dissolution across generations. The Scythians weren't exterminated. They were absorbed. As settled empires expanded and rival nomads displaced them, Scythian communities integrated into new political structures: Sarmatian confederacies, Pontic Greek cities, and eventually Roman client kingdoms. The clearest material signal of that absorption is the Kurgan record. By the 1st century CE, the distinctive Scythian burial tradition, the massive earthen mound packed with gold animal-style grave goods, had ceased across the Pontic steppe. Yet, the kurgans that survive are extraordinary time capsules. Kurgan Tolstaya Mogila, excavated in Ukraine in 1971, yielded a gold pectoral, nearly 13 inches wide, depicting Scythian daily life: men sewing a shirt, mares nursing foals, animals locked in combat. That pectoral raises a harder question. A society that could commission work of that technical precision wasn't a band of raiders. It was a civilization with aesthetic values, craft specialization, and a deliberate sense of how it wanted to be remembered. Scythian culture shaped the civilization surrounding it. Greek craftsmen in Black Sea colonies adopted Scythian animal motifs. Persian metalworkers borrowed compositional techniques. Even the trousers and tunic worn across Eurasia likely spread from steppe nomadic dress. Zoom out, and the Scythians fit a pattern that repeats across Eurasian history. Nomadic steppe peoples, whether Scythian, Hunnic, Mongol, or Turkic, were never peripheral to settled civilizations. They were structural components of the Eurasian system. The steppe corridor the Scythians once dominated became the Silk Road's northern route. The same geography that gave the Scythians their mobility advantage later let the Mongol Empire project power from Korea to Poland in a single generation. But settled empires held one durable advantage: compounding infrastructure. Walls, granaries, roads, and administrative systems let them absorb losses and reorganize. Nomadic societies, organized around kinship and movement, couldn't replicate that structural resilience. So we return to the opening paradox. A civilization that dominated 8 million square kilometers without cities eventually lost precisely because it had no cities. Mobility was both the source of Scythian power and the ceiling on how far that power could compound. Genetically and culturally, the Scythians didn't vanish. They dissolved into successor populations. A 2018 study published in Nature, analyzing ancient DNA from over 137 Scythian-era skeletal remains across the steppe, confirmed that Scythian ancestry persists in populations across Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and the Caucasus into the present day. And the Kurgans endure. Over 100,000 burial mounds are estimated to survive across the Eurasian steppe, many still unexcavated, each a sealed archive of a civilization that left no written language of its own, but buried its story in gold and earth. Here's something most history courses never mention: Scythian composite bows, short, recurved, built for use on horseback, were so technically superior that they shaped military archery from Persia to Han Dynasty China. When Chinese engineers encountered steppe nomads on their northern frontier, they didn't dismiss the bow, they copied it. The same design that let a Scythian warrior loose arrows at full gallop in 500 BCE was still driving cavalry doctrine 1,000 years later. More than 100,000 kurgans still sit unexcavated across the Eurasian steppe. Each one is a sealed data point, and given what the 2018 Nature study extracted from just 137 skeletal samples, the full archive of Scythian life, trade, migration, and identity has barely been opened. The civilization that left no written language may yet tell us more about the ancient world than any text we already have. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more.